first story was posted 9 months ago by a Reddit user named Pro NBA Player. There was an airman in the dorms at some base, I don't know which. Good airman, never any issues. He was Hispanic and very religious, and that demographic takes ghosts and spirits very seriously. Well, apparently, this airman started showing up to work late, messy, out of regs, and performing poorly increasingly over the course of a few weeks. He had a good track record, so at first his supervisors were giving him the benefit of the doubt, but it went on too long and got too frequent that they had to talk to him about it. He said nothing, didn't explain what was going on, just basically sat there and let the supervisors talk to him. Well, this behavior continued, more and more to the point where he started getting in trouble. LOCs, getting chewed out, you know, the usual. However, this didn't deter his behavior, and it only kept getting worse. And finally, they encouraged him to go to mental health. He did, and they found out that this airman, fully, truthfully in their mind, thought their dorm room was haunted. The mental health clinic didn't think the airman was lying. At least the airman fully believed that there was 100% a ghost in his form. But obviously, there's no ghost, right? So clearly, he has a mental health issue going on. They eventually had to move to separate this individual for his psychosis and poor work performance and standards upkeep. He was a good airman, and they didn't want to, but they had to. Well, Shirt comes to the dorm to help move the airman out and goes into the dorm closet to help get all his stuff. Shirt looks up the ceiling and in a vent, no way, he sees a face staring back at him through the vent. Lo and behold, an airman who had gone AWOL was literally living in the walls of the dorm's building and would particularly use the airman's dorm to go to the bathroom, stretch out, whatever. So airman number 1 would be laying in bed and literally hear another person crawl from out of the wall, out of their closet, and nonchalantly waltz into his bathroom and back into the wall on a regular basis. No way he thought his dorm was haunted, especially considering his background. Airman number 2, the ghost, was removed from the base, and airman number 1's health improved and was able to stay in the Air Force. Second story was posted 1 year ago by a Reddit user named Love to Shard. I was at basic training at Fort Jackson in 2009, and we were in the woods doing our 7-day FTX. We were guarding one night, and there were rumors that the drill sergeants were going to attack us that night. I was at a checkpoint with 2 other guys. It was just a dark dirt trail in the middle of the woods, with thick brush on both sides of the trail and just a few feet away from the tree line in either direction. I can't remember if our shift was 1 or 2 hours, but it was about 2 a.m. and close to the end of it. Despite it being so late, all 3 of us were on and super alert because we were a bunch of high-speed dorks and we weren't gonna get shown up by the DSs. So finally, we saw, about a quarter a mile away, a flashlight coming up the trail. It was bouncing up and down just like someone holding a flashlight and walking at a medium pace. We all saw it immediately and got into position and waited, watching it come up the trail. All 3 of us stared at the light coming closer and closer for probably about 5 minutes straight, occasionally whispering to ourselves about what we were supposed to do and whatever. Finally, just as the thing got close enough to where we should see the person behind the light, maybe 20 or 30 meters away, the light veered off the trail and into the bush in a way that it couldn't have done if it was a person with a flashlight. There was no slowing down or choppy steps or whatever. Then, just as it got to the point that it was obvious that there was no person, it took off floating, maybe 10 or 15 feet into the air, still heading towards us, but now in the woodline instead of on the trail. When it got to about maybe 10 feet away from us, it literally just fizzled out with a little light trail and disappeared. We were all just like, what was that? And spent the next 10 minutes of our shift in silence before we went back to our tents. No drill sergeants came through that night. third story was posted 6 years ago by a Reddit user named Rainbow Grim. As a Marine, I used to have the graveyard patrol shift at the Beirut bombing memorial. Part of the memorial is dedicated to a veterans cemetery. Oddly enough, I never got freaked out being completely alone in a remote cemetery in the middle of the night, surrounded by dense woods on all sides. It was actually kind of peaceful, to be honest. However, one night, I was patrolling near the perimeter fence where some of the oldest headstones are, when I heard the sound of a woman humming. I followed the sound and noticed a light glowing through the vines and brush of a large tree. As I approached, I could literally feel my hair beginning to lift as if there were an electric current in the air. I pushed aside the brush and what I saw nearly took my breath away. It was an old, weathered headstone with a large cross etched into the marble. Only the cross was glowing a bright, vivid blue, like a neon bulb. The humming was also suddenly much louder and had a weird plurality to it, like it was coming from hundreds of voices at once. Needless to say, I freaked out. I screamed like a scared little girl and sprinted back to the parking lot. I radioed the guard who was supposed to relieve me and forced him to come early, then spent the rest of my shift in the cab of his truck. I don't think he believed me, but he stayed in his truck and didn't go out on patrol until the sun was fully up. A few days later, I worked up the nerve to return to the grave, during the day of course. As I suspected, in the light of day, it was a completely mundane headstone. There was no name, only the aforementioned cross. I ran my hands over the stone and checked to see if maybe there was some sort of hidden light source or solar panel, but no. It was just plain, solid, unremarkable stone. The humming was gone too. I eventually returned to my normal shift, but never again experienced anything out of the ordinary. I never learned whose grave that was either, but I find myself thinking about it from time to time. It certainly sounds absurd when I say it out loud, and I suppose it could have been a hallucination or a trick of my tired brain, but I don't believe it was. I think it was real. A ghost or a spirit of some sort, but I don't think it was malevolent at all.